Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also consider clicking the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings in astrology on a variety of topics ranging from relationship readings to career to transits for 2-3 years, or solar return charts or predictions for 1 year, etc. You are free to email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can send you a pricing list and reading options and any other details that you might require. Also, I want to mention that I have started membership options on this channel, and the short of it, just to give you the short perks that you will get if you choose to join the membership section, you will get 1 extra video per month for each membership stage or tier. So for the first tier, you will get 1 extra video per month. For the second tier, you will get 2 extra videos per month, so you will have access to level 1 and level 2 videos. And for level 3 or third tier, you will get 3 extra videos per month. The level 1 and level 3 videos are going to be on a variety of topics, so basically anything related to astrology, but it will be content that is not shown on my regular usual videos, right? So this is members only exclusive content, and it can range from, tips and tricks on how to read a horoscope to, I haven't done this yet, but I plan on doing maybe members only astrological synastry for famous couples, for instance, or the analysis of famous people's horoscopes, but then I can also get into divisional charts, etc., etc. So all kinds of things. The level 1 or second tier of membership options is especially related to synastry astrology topics, meaning relationship-oriented astrology. So this could be things like how to discover which kind of partner archetype is right for you according to your horoscope, or it could be, again, different characteristics, whether you're going to have a good marriage according to your horoscope or a less than stellar marriage. But you can find more concrete examples in the lists that you will find in the video description, because I have added the playlists where you can already see all the videos that I have posted in each members section. So yeah, you can see what videos you will have access to from the ones that I have already done. But I will continue to post, like I said, 1 extra video per month for each level of membership. And in addition to that, in the members only section, you will have access to members only polls, and you will also have priority when it comes to getting your comments replied to on my channel. And you will also have stickers that basically show up next to your username that show that you are a member, and a couple of exclusive emojis. All right, so that's pretty much all the perks that you can have as a member on my channel. If you're curious, you can check the video description for more details as well, or you can click the join button under any of my videos to also see the prices, because the prices will be shown in your local currency. All right, in addition to the members only section, I also have a tarot channel, and I post there semi-regularly, and I will be linking the tarot channel in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. It's called Martine's Tarot. So if you are curious about tarot, if you're into it, maybe check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to this intro. And now I'm going to get straight into today's topic. Hello and welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video from me. So today's topic is going to be kind of a story time, more of a story time sort of video. And for those of you who have been watching my videos for quite some time, it may sound a little bit repetitive. If you have watched these particular videos that I'm gonna link in the video description, namely videos that are not directly related to astrology, but related more to certain, let's say, metaphysical subjects and things that I have talked about with respect to spirits and demons and my views on universal morality and karma and free will and all that stuff. I've done a bunch of those videos where I just basically talk about my opinions and give arguments and also share some experiences that I have either directly gone through or, have learned from people I trust. Basically, real life experiences that have solidified my views about certain things, that I guess connect to the paranormal sphere. And I really actually initially wanted to do this video, I think about 2 weeks ago, but I kept postponing it. I didn't have time, so here I am recording it on Halloween Day. Happy Halloween, by the way, for those of you who celebrate it. In my country, it's not exactly a big holiday, but, well, I would say that in the past roughly 1 or 2 decades, people have gotten more into it, not to the point where trick-or-treating is a thing, but, a lot of people use Halloween decorations, Halloween motifs. I remember when I used to have an office job where I had to go to the office. We used to decorate the office and so on and so forth. But it's not like a really big religious thing over here where I am. However, I think I mentioned this in one of these other videos that we actually have a celebration called the Day of the Dead, which is November 1st. And it's similar in some ways to, well, not exactly. We don't have the same legends and everything that people have connected to the Celtic, religion, to the Celtic, celebration of Samhain, which is the basis of modern day Halloween. But it is connected to dark themes as well. So basically, Day of the Dead, I think it's similar to Mexico, Dia de Muertos, in the sense that, people commemorate the dead, They, what we do in Eastern Europe is more like we go to the cemeteries and, people bring flowers and candles to the graves of relatives that have been, that have departed, basically. And usually by evening of the 1st of November, you see the cemeteries being lit with candles and, flowers and everything. But it's not like a parade or a giant celebration. It's a quiet, I guess, sort of holiday, if you can call it a holiday, because it's not exactly a holiday. We don't get a day off or something. But it is similar to Samhain or Halloween in the sense that it has this connection to death and I guess what you would call a different world, right? The world of the departed, if you even believe that such a thing exists, because of course not everyone does. And anyway, I do find this interesting. I think I've mentioned this as well in other videos that a lot of cultures seem to have something going on around November 1st, connected to things that are sort of paranormal, right? Paranormal, not exactly, but yeah, sort of, in the sense that, the spirits of the dead are closer to us, or they are among us, or that kind of thing. I know that in Samhain, the theory is connected to demons and, creatures from other realms that potentially roam the earth around October 31st and November 1st. There's this concept that the veil between our world and the invisible, quote-unquote, world of whatever, other creatures, demons, fairies, whatnot, and also the deceased, that the veil between these worlds is really thinnest around this time. And yeah, people also in Samhain dress up because they believe that that's a way to scare off evil spirits that might try to kidnap them, even. I believe, as far as I've read originally, that was the belief of the Celts. But anyway, basically, I started rambling a little bit about Halloween because it is Halloween Day, but aside from that, the reason I wanted to talk about, so it's specifically because it is connected to this concept of the spirit world and the veil being thinnest around this time, that around this time of the year I am most reminded, not that I'm not thinking about these things for the rest of the year, but I am probably thinking about it more around this time, that about this topic of the paranormal, about demons, about, spirits, and what happens after a person passes away, if there's any life after, etc., etc. And again, I have done these videos in the past, and I will be linking them in the video description, where I actually went very, very in depth with two of the people that I would say I'm pretty close to, in the sense that, I've known them for quite some time, and these are people that I trust, and, people who have confided in me with respect to all kinds of strange things that have happened to them, right? I have gone more in depth in that one video that is lengthier, about where I talked about karma, and, I talked about how, one of them in particular is someone who has heard a voice many times in her life. The other person, and that is more, that second person is the person that has inspired this video the most, is someone who has actually tried to conjure something, an entity, basically, and ended up having a very traumatic experience because of that. That pretty much affected him for the rest of his life. And I was, again, very much reminded of his story, not just because of Halloween, but because about roughly 2 weeks ago, I was bored and I was watching Netflix, and I came across this series, even though I told myself that I wasn't going to watch any more creepy shit, no more horror films and all that stuff, because I definitely think that it stores in your subconscious and it can produce anxiety over time. And I have become way more mindful of what I am watching since I've had some serious problems with anxiety, to the point where I've had to take medication some years ago. I'm not taking medication for anxiety anymore, but it's still kind of it's not like the kind of thing that you're 100% over, I think. And, in this world, there's plenty of reasons for anxiety as it is, without watching too much creepy stuff. However, the temptation is always there for me. I have no qualms about saying this, that I have Venus in Purva Bhadrapada, and again, maybe some of you remember that I mentioned that in other videos. And it's probably also one of the reasons why I have felt drawn towards astrology from a very, very young age. But I've always felt drawn to these things that have to do with the paranormal, I guess, especially death, or the spirit world, or how should I put it? Well, demons, I guess. There's no other way to put it. Demons, angels, right? Anything that is kind of woo-woo, I guess, is a topic of interest. So it's hard for me to stay away, even though I have told myself that I wasn't going to watch any more anxiety-inducing stuff. And anyway, I was bored and I started watching this show called True Haunting. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. And I actually stopped watching it after about, I think, the first 4 episodes, because it got too creepy. And not just because it got too creepy, but because it actually reminded me of a lot of things that this friend talked about. And I'm going to go over, so again, if you have watched those other videos that I posted a while ago, you're probably going to just think that this is repetitive. But I'm going to go over some of the main ideas. And I just want to say one more time that this is like the first time. So, I mean, even though I'm interested in paranormal stuff and I've watched scary movies my whole life, and you know, to be honest, even though I've been interested in all that, even like 10 years ago, let's say, if someone would have come over to me and told me a story about how they conjured a demon or something, I would have thought that they're off of their medication or something. And I mean, and I'm still a very skeptical, in many ways, left brain sort of person. And again, for those of you who don't know, I do have a background of engineering. I have a degree of engineering in telecommunications, actually. And I have worked as an engineer, not very high end stuff, but you know, I come from a background of someone who is definitely capable of thinking logically. I've had high grades in math and physics and all that. So, I mean, I've always kind of had this very left brain side where I want things to make sense. I want things to be logical, but at the same time, you know, if I see something that you know, where I see patterns repeating and they keep repeating and repeating, I mean, I can't just stop pretending that there isn't something there. So it, you know, that's how I kind of got into astrology. Anyway, I'm digressing already. But the bottom line is, yeah, back to this friend. So I actually started talking to him, like I started to get to know him about 10 years ago, I think. Yeah, maybe even, yeah, no, it was exactly about 10 years. Not exactly, it was maybe 10 years and a few months. That's when we met. And the first few years that we talked and all this stuff, I mean, we used to hang out and talk and about all kinds of things. He never mentioned anything about anything paranormal. And mind you, this is also a person who is also, on the surface at least, very left-brained. Someone who works in something connected to technology. And, you know, since he never mentioned anything about occultism or anything, I didn't think that he was particularly interested. And it wasn't until I think about 3 years or something, 3 or 4 years after we started to get to know each other, that I kind of jokingly mentioned at some point that I'm just going to conjure something tonight or something. I don't know. I literally just made one of my silly, like, well, silly from my perspective, but I guess some people take them seriously. I made a joke about how I'm gonna go home and conjure something. I think I had been drinking or some shit. And I did mention, and again, I felt drawn to these things because, hello, Venus in Purva Bhadrapada. I'm blaming everything on the Purva Bhadrapada in my horoscope. But I did, ever since I was a kid, again, despite the left brain side of my mind, I felt like curious, you know, I felt curious about things like seances, you know, and people who claim to talk to the dead and, you know, people who claimed that they had experiences with entities and whatnot. And I had downloaded some books, you know, but I was still, and thank God that I was, because this whole video, by the way, I should have mentioned, is just a gigantic warning, basically, against people who might want to try this kind of thing. But thank God I always had this, you know, little, I guess, alarm bell in my brain that always told me that I shouldn't really go through with it, because I had come across these books when I was a teenager a long time ago, right, many moons ago, that I found online, that talked about how to, you know, conjure stuff, basically. And there was a strong temptation, you know, always, but then I put them in a folder somewhere on a hard disk and I stopped thinking about it because I always like instinctively felt that something, you know, that something potentially bad might happen, even though, again, there was a big part of me that was very skeptical and there was like, yeah, it's probably nothing, it's probably bullshit, you know, you're just probably talking to the air and nothing's gonna happen. And so this friend of mine, right, said that was the first time where he started talking about this, and he said, hold on a second, like, seriously, don't even think about doing this. I want to tell you something that happened to me, blah, blah, blah. And at first, when he started to describe what had happened, again, there was a part of my brain that was like, yeah, right. You know, I really didn't fully believe him. But then I thought, like, what reason would he have to lie about this stuff? And the thing is that, stuff he talked about really, once I have done more research over the years, I have found multiple sources that sort of point to things that he had described as well. And in addition to that, this sort of documentary that's inspired by real events, True Haunting, really triggered the whole thing again for me, the whole memory of everything he told me, because there were some things that were shown in this video that I had only heard from him before. That meaning things that this guy in question, or these people in question, because there were multiple people affected by this haunting, quote unquote, which actually was probably a demon, but I'm gonna get to that. And there were multiple things that were shown in that video that I had heard from him before, and only from him, basically things that were similar between these people's experiences and his experience. And one of the, a few things, probably the scariest is the thing that really caught my attention was that this guy in the documentary talked about how he was having horrible nightmares, and that the nightmares kept escalating, and got to the point where he couldn't tell if they were real or not. And, he had nightmares where he was afraid to fall asleep at night, with all kinds of horrible things happening to him. So, really intense nightmares. And another thing that really stood out to me was that he said at one point that he passed out in the shower and woke up with scratch marks on his back. And that was literally something that this friend of mine also mentioned. He didn't pass out in the shower, but he said after a lot of these nightmares, he had scratches on his back. And aside from that, things like, the radio turning on by itself started happening in his apartment. This is also something that this friend of mine mentioned. Another thing was the room that he was in, and actually this guy in True Haunting, he was in a dorm room when this thing happened, and this entity, which again, my opinion, this was a demon, moved from, after he left this guy alone, moved on to other people and started doing more crazy stuff to other people, right? Possessing them and God knows what. And yeah, another thing that he mentioned that also corresponded to what my friend said was that his room was unusually cold. And it got to the point where other people, including a priest, eventually this guy called a priest who did an exorcism and then caused the demon to be quiet for a few months until it started acting up in someone else's dorm room. But yeah, this was also something like that this friend mentioned, that the room is unusually cold around these people. He was talking about people who are actually possessed. He also mentioned that he got into this thing because it was a very traumatic experience, and eventually what saved him was someone who was able to perform an exorcism. And apparently there are people all around the world, but of course they're not readily available, that can perform exorcisms, right? And they come from different faiths as well. There is a procedure, I don't know, I wasn't given details with respect to the procedure. Also, this friend of mine is very hush-hush about the whole thing because he doesn't want anyone, even by accident, to ever try anything, because it's a horrible thing. Not just traumatic, but also potentially damaging to other people around the person who tries this kind of thing, of course, because if the demon actually manages to possess you, they start to, first of all, talk to you, they start asking for things, and in his case in particular, he and a bunch of friends got together and conjured this entity, after which all of them started hearing a voice, and the voice started to ask them for little sacrifices, and the sacrifices kept getting bigger and bigger. At first it was, encouraging them to do minor mischief, and then it got to the point where it started asking them for human sacrifices. And one of his friends actually got fully into it to the point where he was ready to potentially off someone in order to get power, because this is what these demons do. They promise something, in exchange for, well, I guess damnation, if you want to look at it like that. If you're from a religious, and again, I am a person who's not super religious, so I try to look at this from as an objective perspective as I can. But I do think that there are entities that we just don't see, that we don't understand, that may be able to contact us somehow. And with respect to what their true motivations are and where they come from, I have no idea. I know what some of the theories are, the theories from religion, of course, that they're called demons. And that they are, well, I guess Christians would say that they are sent to test people. They're not actually sent, by the way. This is another thing that this friend mentioned, that he has attended exorcisms before, and it's never a case where a demon just takes a hold of someone. They have to be invited into a space, basically. And the thing is that once they are invited into a space, it's like probably anyone who's around is fair game at the moment of invitation, right? And another thing is that once they actually possess a place or a person, that person is somehow forever marked and becomes an easy target, an easy gateway for demons to actually use them. And he said, according to his experiences, that there are cases of people who actually lose consciousness, and to the point where, the demon, not lose consciousness, actually, that's why it's even scarier. He said that people are actually fully conscious, but they will lose control of their bodies for up to a few hours sometimes, worst case scenario, where basically the demon just takes over their bodies and they're just sitting there helplessly, like an observer in their brains, while this thing takes over and starts doing things on their behalf. And he said it's like a gradual process. It starts with, minor things, and the more it takes control, the worse it gets. And there are all kinds of signs, aside from the fact that, and again, this is the case that he was talking about was actual physical possessions, right? And I feel like this is exactly what happened in the True Haunting documentary as well. And that, it takes a hold of one person, but then, of course, if there's an exorcism, if someone manages to successfully exorcise them, they move on to the next victim, or someone who can also be a target that was maybe in around the same place as the first person, or around someone who conjured them, basically. And the bottom line is that these things, these entities, they don't have a consciousness, and they are pretty much like a parasite. They want to use people for, again, nobody can really know what their motivations are, but I guess we can speculate. I mean, one motivation could just be to experience life in a physical human body, or to mess with humans, but they're not. And again, according to, as far as I know, this is something I heard from Judaism, because Christianity doesn't really talk much about demons, as far as I know. I don't know anything about Islam and what it says about demons, if it says anything at all. But I know that in Judaism, there is this idea that, demons are like animals in some ways, but they're from a different plane. And in a way, they are not allowed, not in a way, they're literally not allowed. So normally, because of the laws created by God, I guess, if you will, or universe, or whatever you want to call it, they're not allowed to mess with people and like to possess people. But if people start to, break the rules and actually invite them and do these kinds of, and there are specific rituals. Again, this friend of mine never told me what the ritual that he applied was, because he said he doesn't want even the slightest risk of me ever having a moment of weakness and trying something. And I'm like, thanks a lot for the confidence. But like, I would never try this shit ever in a million years, especially after what he told me. And it's got to the point where I'm actually a little bit anxious, if anything, if I notice anything weird in my environment, I start to freak out, and I start to not to freak out exactly. I'm not paranoid or anything, but I'm more cautious. I'm definitely way more cautious because I definitely think of these things as real now. And like I said, I would never even jokingly try something like a conjuring. I'm even nervous when it comes to doing little Wicca things because I used to do, I guess what would be called spells, but spells are not conjurings because you're not actually calling a name or, yeah, it's not the same thing. You're not calling on an entity. I mean, again, speaking for myself, I guess different people may practice different kinds of Wicca, but I used to do these kinds of spells, and they were just something that made me feel good, and it was kind of like a meditation of some sorts where I would use candles and crystals and stuff. So it wasn't anything very serious. But now, after all of these stories, I've gotten to the point where I haven't done a Wicca thing in a long time. I'm like afraid of doing anything that might potentially, I don't know, open the wrong gate or something. And aside from that, I mean, this is again, I'm going to get really paranormal with respect to this, but this friend of mine had an experience not too long after the exorcism, where he actually almost died. He was in a car accident and he was, I think, pronounced dead for a few minutes or something like that. During which I don't think he was. I am not sure if he was pronounced dead or he was unconscious. And again, again, this is the part where I was very skeptical. But he told me this whole story. So, and he's very much convinced that this is what happened. He said that he experienced something that seemed to be what he thought was a trial, because it was very different from a dream. It felt very real. And it was like he was a thought form in a way. He said that it's really difficult to explain because nobody was talking, but he understood exactly what was going on, and that he was basically held accountable for, this incident of calling an entity, because he was the one who initiated the whole thing. He was the one who thought that it would be fun. He was young at that time, like less than 20 years old, so again, he just thought maybe this thing is gonna, I don't know, offer something or give him power. And he said he went through this whole trial thing where he saw his past lives, and was also basically told that he will suffer some very serious consequences. I'm not going to get too much into details, but something where he will suffer some eternal serious consequences because of this. And he was also given a choice to, either basically pass on or to come back and focus on, mending the wrong that he did, because what he did affected not just him, but a bunch of other lives, other people, and including, this one person that I said that really went off his rocker to the point where he actually believed that he was chosen by a great power and tried to start a cult or something. And once the exorcism was performed, it was, the voice that they were all hearing disappeared, basically, from all of them, not just from him. And this one guy who was ready to do human sacrifices basically got pissed off and wanted nothing to do with him ever again, even though he was his best friend, etc. So anyway, yeah, he went through this trial thing and then went back, decided to, come back and try to undo some of the wrong that he did. And this is also why he got involved with actually helping people with these kinds of problems. And he said in his experience, it's almost always, young people in their teens mostly, sometimes in their 20s, who think that it's fun to conjure stuff, right? And they end up having these horribly traumatic experiences where they go through these nightmares, these, losing controls of their bodies. He said it's also a thing where, the worse it gets, they start to smell in a nasty way. Like, and he also said another thing is that the way that if there is some kind of paranormal entity in a space is by putting a drop of clear olive oil, so meaning clean olive oil without any kind of solids in it, right? Because sometimes olive oil will still have some of that solid stuff from olives or whatever it is, or from the seeds, right? And it has to be like clean, extra virgin olive oil. So if you put a drop of that in a glass of water and it goes to the bottom of the cup of water or whatever it is, something transparent, there are very high chances, if not almost 100%, that there is some kind of supernatural activity happening in that environment. Because again, normally, according to the laws of physics, oil will always float on water because it is less dense. So if it goes to the bottom, it means that something is happening that is, defying the laws of physics in that space. And he said he actually saw this happening. And again, I know that all of this sounds very woo-woo. It sounded very woo-woo to me. And there's still like a part of me that's like, I don't know. But I swear, now that I saw the haunting thing, and this guy described a lot of the same things that this friend described, I was again sort of reconvinced that a lot of the stuff he said was true. And even before, I still like 80% believe him because, like I said, this is a person who is very down to earth, logical, reasonable. And he had absolutely no reason to just make up this stuff, this whole story to me, for anything, to be honest. And if anything, this is the kind of thing that, people want to keep private. So, and he actually said that aside from me and The Exorcist, I think, he didn't tell anyone about it because it's such hush hush thing. And he said he also went through, it wasn't just like it was over after the exorcism and this accident and everything, that it was something that took over a year or something, where he kept having very vivid dreams of, or times where he lost track of what was happening in reality. He had flashbacks from past lives and stuff. And again, all of this stuff was, things that he was lucky to have had access to people, to come in contact with people who were experienced in these things and helped guide him through it, because otherwise he may have ended up in a, psych ward. And even now, there are a lot of things that he cannot do. For instance, he can't do tarot. He cannot use tarot. He also wears some things that have, protective sort of energy, so that he is no longer targeted by demons. Because, like I said before, once they enter your body, they kind of mark you as a gateway. And it means that you're going to be way more vulnerable to potential attacks than a person who has never had this kind of experience. But yeah, so the reason I just wanted to share all of this again is as a warning sign, mainly, but also as a way to say that, a lot of stuff is happening in the world that I think most people are not really aware of. Since this friend told me his story, I have suddenly become, way more aware of these sort of things. And I remember seeing, again, I was watching these like true crime documentaries. I remember I came across this list like a few years ago. Someone had done a list of the most horrific crimes in Britain or something like that. And there was this one guy in particular that had exactly all of the symptoms, that had the exact symptoms of demonic possession that my friend was talking about, like to the point where, this guy, again, had been relatively sane, relatively normal, and all of a sudden he had what seemed to be a schizophrenic, episode where he started hearing a voice, and the voice started asking him for human sacrifices. And basically this guy just went on a killing spree, started killing random people in a park at night, and he was arrested. And the thing is, you might look at these sorts of things and you say, well, these people are just insane, they have schizophrenia, they have, I don't know, whatever, they may have all kinds of mental disorders. And as far as I have seen, and don't get me wrong, schizophrenia is also real, all right? But when it comes to schizophrenia, you generally won't see these cases where someone is hearing a voice that asks them for sacrifices or asks them for anything else, really. It's usually, with schizophrenia, it's usually around, I don't know, random stories as far as I have seen or heard from cases of people who actually got this diagnostic, sorry, or they see hallucinations. But even the hallucinations, a lot of the times they are things that, have some kind of correspondent in real life. It's not like they see entities that nobody else has seen or something like that. For instance, there's this one woman who gave a TED talk who is diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she actually discovered something, a constellation or a star or something like that. She gave a TED talk, I forgot what her name was, but she was describing some of her hallucinations and how she lives with schizophrenia. And basically she said she sees a clown that kind of looks like the clown from It, Pennywise, and she actually, funnily enough, said that she is seeing it right now as she was giving the speech. She saw it in the audience and all that stuff. And she said that she understands it's coming from, a part of her brain that is just malfunctioning and all that stuff. But you generally, again, you won't hear these cases where a voice is just talking to you and telling you, kill that person, or if you do that, or if you give me this, I will give you, I don't know, riches and power and, I don't know, eternal life or whatever the hell they promise. And yeah, I think these things have been around for a long time. And again, after this friend of mine told me this story, I've also just kind of thought back at a lot of the things that I've seen in documentaries and Hollywood films, and which at the time, I really dismissed as, oh, this is just, some kind of story meant for getting attention. I mean, it's fun to think about, but I'm sure it's bullshit, that kind of thing. And after this friend of mine told me the story, I'm like, I kind of re-looked at some of the things or remembered some things that I had watched, documentaries and films and whatnot. And it just seemed so on point with a lot of the stuff that this friend described, And I really think, how people have basically gossiped, or there has been a rumor basically online for years that there are all kinds of weird satanic rituals and stuff happening in high-end societies or among people who are rich and powerful. I've actually even heard this from Kapil Raj in one video. I remember he talked about how he said something along the lines of how people who become very famous in again, this is his theory. I have not tested it, but I remember it just caught my attention that he said that. He said that people who become very, rich and famous tend to have strong water houses, 4th house, 8th house especially, right? 8th house and 12th house, because these houses are connected to the occult, and because there's a lot of occult stuff happening in Hollywood and whatnot. Now, I don't know, again, if this was his original observation, if he maybe had insight into something that regular people don't have insight into, or if he just himself, again, maybe picked up some gossip online, or, saw some documentaries about what is going on in Hollywood and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I have seen a lot to make me believe. I mean, again, I'm almost like 90% convinced that this kind of stuff is real. And I also am convinced that I personally don't want anything to do with it. I would not want anyone around me to have anything to do with it. And again, to a large extent, the reason I wanted to make this video is to tell people not to mess around with these things, and especially around Halloween. You see, and again, with respect to things like seances and stuff, I would personally, I don't know if it would be something that would potentially invite an entity, unless, again, you specifically call a name or something. But personally, again, I would not even risk it. I would not risk it because, as far as this friend of mine told me, yes, it has to be a conjuring where you perform a specific ritual. And all he told me was that it's a lot less complicated than I would imagine. So doesn't involve human sacrifices, or like, I don't know, bringing a feather of a dodo bird and a tyrannosaur bone. It's something that generally any person could do, basically, which makes it even scarier, really. And Yeah, so I would not risk it. I've never done a seance and I am not curious, honestly. As much as I love to see stories and films and whatever about this stuff, about woo woo stuff, there is a line that I don't want to cross personally. Yeah. But aside from that, this is being so, like I said, it's being kind of a story time and kind of a reminder, like I said, for many of you who maybe have already watched the previous videos where I talked about this as well. But I wanted to do another video again to remind you, to maybe give more details that I haven't said before. And I also want to remind you again that I have done a video that I will be linking in the video description about how to keep yourself clean, how to keep your space clean of paranormal activity. You know, there are some tips there that also involve like some small rituals and some things, you know, just some small everyday things that you can do to make sure that you stay clear of, you know, things like demons, or I've heard even, you know, spirits of the dead, but not see, here's the thing, spirits of the dead, as far as I have heard, again, through this friend mainly who has connections to paranormal circles and stuff, is that you're very unlikely to see a serious haunting coming from a dead person, right? Someone who has deceased. Like, sometimes they do linger, but not for years. They don't, again, they won't make you, I don't know, talk in ancient Aramaic or something. If that actually happens, that is way more likely, in fact, probably 99.9% more likely to be a demon. It's a paranormal entity that is very much non-human, basically. But yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to share. And again, I hope that you will make the most of this story. And what can I say? I know that to some extent this is just going to make me sound crazier than usual, but I don't care. This is in the interest of science. It is in the interest of, I would say, social awareness, social well-being. I mean, people need to know, I think, that these things can be real, that they can become a problem, and most importantly, that they never offer any real solutions, you know. And here's the thing, you may think, and I have heard stories, again, it's very difficult to verify any of these stories, but in recent years, there have been more and more people coming forward talking about, you know, being victims of ritualistic abuse and horrible things that they are subjected to. And, you know, again, I don't find them unbelievable anymore, because of what this, you know, friend of mine has told me. And again, other things that I have since noticed over the years, that, you know, if you open your eyes and you watch the news every now and then, you're going to see, you know, tiny pieces of evidence every now and then that really tend to show that this stuff is out there, but it's usually brushed off. Like I said, it's, you know, dismissed as schizophrenia or temporary insanity, or, oh, that person had health issues. And sometimes, of course, there is a interest to deem these people or to label these people as insane by others that might be potentially threatened by this truth, right? So yeah, I tend to be way more skeptical, not skeptical, I mean skeptical in the sense of skeptical of certain individuals, right, who try to portray this stuff as nothing, and that, oh, it's just made up, it's just woo-woo. And even with respect to, you know, the Wicca crowd, I have to say, because I used to be, again, because of my interest in everything sort of witchcraft and whatever, and I feel like witchcraft now has become such a popular, acceptable thing, and especially, there are especially so many women who are drawn to Wicca because they feel unincluded or misunderstood by mainstream Abrahamic religions, which are inherently misogynistic. I'm not going to deny that. Some of them, some denominations more than others, right? But they're all inherently misogynistic, make no mistake about it. By the way, I did say that I was going to make a video at some point where I'm going to piss everyone off. Well, everyone who's religious anyway. Not that religious people, I think, would even watch my videos, but I did say that I was going to make a video at some point. Maybe I will by the end of this year. where I'm going to talk about, where I want to talk about my views on how Abrahamic religions basically portray women and control and manipulate women. But yeah, let me know if you would like to see that, of course. And where was I? Yeah, there are loads of women being drawn to this Wicca thing, and I will admit, when I got on YouTube for the very first time, a long time ago, again, many moons ago, I used to look through a lot of these Wicca related channels, and I was actually thinking about this, like some of the ones that I used to watch like 10 years ago have disappeared. I don't know what happened, but hopefully they're okay. And I used to get into it, not to the point where, again, I was very serious about it, because there was, again, I have this very rational part of my brain that I guess keeps me from going too far into woo-woo. There's some point where it will just bounce me back to, never mind, let's just let's just get things done, basically, that kind of thing. And even when I've said this in other videos, even my approach to astrology is very hands-on, in the sense that I just look for what works. I don't get lost in woo-woo or religion or faith too much, right? It's ultimately what I see works, and that's what I use, right? But there are a lot of people, I feel, impressionable young people especially, that get into Wicca, and they really get into it. I mean, I've watched some channels that I admit are kind of a guilty pleasure. Every once in a while, I will watch some of their podcasts and some of their videos, simply because I like the aesthetic, that whole witchcore aesthetic with the dark lace and the gothic, I don't know, jewelry and the nice leather-bound books on the shelves behind them and whatever they present on their channels. I'm not going to name names. But again, if you do some simple searches, I'm sure on YouTube you're going to come across some of these channels of women, mostly women, as far as I've seen, who claim to be into witchcraft, into Wicca. And I've watched quite a few of these podcasts, and some of them get really dangerously into stuff like conjuring. They talk about, oh, I am having a relationship with this deity, or I've tried this conjuring, and they talk about deities they conjure, talking to Hecate and all this stuff. And it really is, I feel, a dangerously close trajectory to potentially messing with something that you're going to regret eventually, because one day you might come across a name that actually means something and end up foaming at the mouth, right? And if you're not lucky, because again, not everyone can find an exorcist. Like I said, this friend of mine was lucky because he knew people who somehow managed to get him in touch. But to an average person from a secular world, you can't just find an exorcist, right? And if you don't find one in time, they could lock you up in the psych ward because you talk crazy, or this thing takes over your body and starts murdering people, or whatever the hell it is, right? So, I just feel like it's, I think it's a dangerous game, to be honest. As much as I like the aesthetic and everything, I think people should be more careful. They should be more aware. And based on my experience, things like Wicca and witchcraft, I think they work if you use them as a kind of meditation. And maybe I will get into this in a separate video, because I don't want to, it's already too long and too much of a ranting. But I have done some spells and I have seen results, but like I said, they were not conjurings. And also, the few times that I have tried spells, I'm always very careful not to do anything that is, evil, like, trying to destroy someone or anything like that, because it always comes back to bite you in the ass. I mean, the only time when it's allowed, and again, this is also something that I have talked about more in depth in that video where I talked about the laws of karma, and I also talked about this to my friend, that, there are situations where you can not exactly conjure, but you can conjure not a demon, but an angel. There's this whole theory, philosophy, and I don't even know personally how it's done, but I know from this friend that it can be done. And it opens like a trial thing. But even that is extremely risky, in the sense that it could end up acting against you, right? So you could, let's say, I don't know, someone pisses you off. Let's say you're dealing with a narcissist, or someone you perceive to be a narcissist, because it doesn't mean that you're always right. People tend to be very subjective when it comes to hating someone, right? But let's say you are pissed off that, I don't know, they are trying to badmouth you on social media, right? And you want to get rid of them. So you can do something like this kind of a trial thing, and what happens is that your karma is getting pitted against this other person's karma, right? And the theory is that, let's say if this person was a saint in a past life, and I don't know, they sacrificed themselves to save 100 people, you might actually end up losing the trial, which means that you could get, well, depending on the situation, you could get a whole host of all kinds of painful, even death experiences. And again, this is a whole metaphysical thing that, if you know where to look, and I'm not going to give names, I know I'm being very vague purposefully because I don't want to give names, but if you really, really dig, you could find information about this kind of thing, and it goes even way up into politicians and theories that, for instance, some politicians were taken out throughout history by these methods, because it involves, when there is a punishment, right, it involves something very natural that can never be traced back. So it's not like, you know, I don't know, poisoning someone, heaven forbid. It's something like, I don't know, you open a trial, and if they are found to be guilty, they will die of a heart attack. Nothing that can be traced back to you. Or those are not even the worst cases. You know, I've heard cases where people get all kinds of punishments, like physical suffering, heavy disease, even to the point of being bedridden or losing their minds or whatever the hell it is, right? So anything that's basically going to stop that person from doing something that is karmically wrong against someone else. And yeah, it's very woo-woo, and I realize it sounds very crazy, very far-fetched, because 10 years ago, or even less, I would have thought the exact same thing. If I would have come across this video, let me put it like that, like 10 years ago or more, I would have said that, I'm probably insane. And so I would totally understand anyone who is very skeptical. If you have even made it this far, bless. If you have, please comment in the comment section. And also, don't forget to pat yourselves on the back. Sorry for, I said bat, Freudian slip, because Halloween. Don't forget to pat yourselves on the back for having listened this far. So thank you very much. But yeah, okay, I'm going to close the rant right here. This is the general idea. And again, I do recommend that you watch the video where I went over steps to avoid, evil eye and potentially bad entities entering your space and all that stuff. As well as the one where I talked about karma, which is way more lengthy and all that. But if you have the time, I do recommend it. So yeah, this has been what I wanted to share. I hope that you make the most of this information. And also, don't forget that I have posted a recent sales offer, quote unquote. Yeah, it is a sales offer, not quote unquote. That is going to be available. I have actually extended the deadline because I've gotten a few emails that said, oh, sorry, I forgot it. You were in a different time zone. Yeah, so I did mention that I have opened that. So I have extended the deadline now until midnight, 2nd of November, basically. So as soon as that border hits between the 1st and the 2nd of November by Central European time zone, that's when the offer ends. And the offer is basically 10% off of all of my tarot and astrology readings. And I have posted the full list of readings, options, prices, and all that on my community posts, both on my astrology channel for astrology readings and also on my tarot channel for tarot readings if you're interested. So yeah, don't be, shy to look into it. And again, drop me an email if you have any questions. Aside from that, of course, if you would like to support my channel further, feel free to share this video with as many people as might be interested in this topic. Feel free to comment in the comment section. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, it's the easiest way to support me, and it is free. Also, click on the notifications bell if you want to be notified when I will upload a new video. And also, if you would like to find out more about the membership section, check out the introductory part of this video where I go over the 3 membership tiers. You can also find details very quickly by clicking on the join button under my video, or any videos on my channel, I mean, where you can see, the membership tiers. You can also see the videos I have posted so far on each membership tier. I've posted quite a few of them already. And also, you can see the prices in your local currency, right? Aside from that, of course, I also have a tarot channel. Like I mentioned, for those of you who are new, it's called Martine's Tarot, and I will be linking it in the video description. And yeah, if you're curious about tarot, go ahead and check it out. Maybe subscribe to that channel as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you at my next video. Bye.